Hi, my name is Jacob Mahon. I am the lead technician out of the Southeastern Equipment Heath location. Today we're going to go over some general inspections of the CASE skid steer and CTLs. First, we're going to start with this CASE TR270B. We're going to do a walk around before we get in the machine and start it up. So first, you want to start at the front of the machine. You just want to check and make sure none of the hoses are loose or leaking anything obvious. You want to make sure that the coupler is not broken or cracked anywhere. We're going to come around to the side of the machine. You'll check for any leaks on the boom, anything with the boom cylinders or hoses. And then you just want to inspect the tracks. Make sure you don't have an idler that's failed, that's something that's obvious that you can see. Make sure that the track's not off the sprocket. Then we're going to continue on around the back of the machine. There's a couple things here I noticed right off the rip, that there's some damage to the camera and the lights here in the rear. Nothing that's going to keep us from starting the machine, but something you want to note for when you get in the machine. If you try to back up, you want to be aware that the camera might not be working. I'm going to continue around to the side of the machine, and we can see, again, like the other side, no real damage here, no real major leaks. Obviously the machine's dirty. That's something you're going to see when you're out in the field if somebody's been operating the machine. Okay, next step after the walk around is we're going to go to the rear of the machine. We're going to open the hood, open the back door, and we're going to check all the fluid levels before we go inside. Now we're going to open up the hood and the back door here. Be cautious. Some machines like this one, the strut will be wear out and the hood can fall. What I like to start with is the engine oil. Obviously you want to make sure the machine's on level ground when you do this. You can always do a check beforehand if you're not on level ground, just to make sure there is oil in the dipstick. But once you move it, park it, let it sit for a minute, and then you can check the engine oil level. And we can see that the engine oil level is actually good on this. It's right at the full mark, so we're good there. Next thing we want to check is that the coolant level is full in the reservoir here. And as you can see, we are actually low. The fluid's clear at the bottom of the reservoir. The full range is up here, and you always want to check that with the engine cold. So if you don't have fluid in the reservoir, the next step, when the engine's cold, you don't want to do this when this is hot. You want to pull the radiator cap and ensure that there is fluid in the radiator. And we can see that it is low, but there is fluid in the radiator. So we know we're okay to start this machine, but we note that the fluid level is low. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the hydraulic oil. On this particular machine, you can see that the level is not in the sight glass. And the loader arms are in the correct position, so that's loader arm all the way down, bucket curled all the way back, and we have no fluid in the sight glass. So you're going to want to fill the reservoir up to the sight glass in this instance before you start the machine. Some other little checks you can do before you get in and start it up. Make sure that you don't have any leaks around the fuel filter. You have a fuel filter here, and then you have a fuel water separator here. Another good thing that you can do before you start the machine, you want to loosen this drain cock here, and that's going to drain any of the water out of the water separator before you start the machine. This is something that you should do daily. One other thing to check while we're back here, you want to pull the air box lid off and make sure that the air filter is in good condition before starting the machine. Make sure it's not packed with dirt. If it is, that's something you're going to want to take care of before you start the machine. While we're back here under the hood, you want to check any intake hoses, any boost hoses, anything for cracking, for wear, any rub marks. You want to make sure that the hose clamps are tight. Okay, now that we're in the machine, first thing you want to do is turn the key on, check that there are no warning messages on the display, make sure that there is fuel in the machine, and then you're going to go around, you're going to check all your switches, check functionality of all the switches in the cab. You're going to want to turn the AC and the heat on. Obviously, you won't know that if that's working until the engine is running, but you do want to check those functions. Okay, before we exit the machine, you're going to want to turn the light switch on, and then we're going to start the machine so we can do our walk around, check all the lights, and then check things back at the engine while it's running. Now that the machine's running, we can walk around with all the lights on, check and make sure all of our lights are working properly. We can see that all the work lights in the front here are working. To come around to the rear, we can see that our rear work lights are working properly. They are damaged, obviously, like we discussed before, but they are still functioning. Now I'm going to walk around to the front of the machine and I'll turn the marker lights on so we can check them. Now we've changed the switch to turn the marker lights on, we'll check them as well. We can see that the marker lights are functioning properly. Okay, so now that we're at the rear of the machine with the engine running, there's just a few things you want to look at. You want to check that the belt is riding good on all the pulleys. You want to make sure that the fan is not contacting anything. And then you want to make sure there's no fuel or oil spraying out of the engine anywhere. Those can be fire hazards, so we just want to make sure that everything's okay before we start operating the machine. Next, we're going to get in the machine, we're going to pull it out into a safe area, and we're going to track the machine back and forth, ensure that it's tracking straight and forward and reverse. We're going to turn the machine back and forth to make sure everything's working properly, and then we're also going to cycle all the loader functions to make sure everything's working there. So a couple things we noticed when doing that initial drive of the machine. The backup beeper did not work when reversing the machine, and also the rear view camera that we had found that was damaged before is also not working. So those are two important safety features that we want to make sure that we take care of before operating the machine again. Next, we're going to connect the bucket to the front of the machine, and we're going to use that to raise the machine off the ground to do a check of the undercarriage. While connecting the bucket, you want to make sure that the indicators retract, showing that the bucket is locked. So we'll curl back here. You can see that the indicators retract. Another thing I like to do is to raise the bucket in the air, curl it down to where you can see the pins at the bottom are latched into the bucket. Now we're going to check the rollers and the idlers. This is just a basic check to make sure you don't have any that are completely worn out or stuck, causing you any issues. This would also be a good time to check the tracks for any extreme wear. You'll get cracking around the inside of the tracks. Sometimes you'll get cracking on the top, and you'll see where the belts are separating inside. If any of that's going on, you want to park the machine and get that taken care of. Another thing you want to check while you're on the side of the machine, you want to check your planetaries, your final drives for any leaks. So you want to check around the drain plug areas, around the fill plugs. You also want to check behind the drive to make sure the seal at the back's not leaking. And also the rollers and the idlers are oil filled. So you want to check and make sure that you don't have any leakage around any of those. Okay, while the machine's up in the air, you want to get down, don't get under the machine, but you can look under, make sure you don't see anything dripping from the belly of the machine. That would indicate a leak underneath the cab. That would require the machine to be brought into the shop for further diagnosis. While we're at the front of the machine with the bucket on, this is when you want to take time to inspect the cutting edge for wear. If it's starting to get into the bucket, you want to get that taken care of. You also want to check your hardware, make sure you don't have any loose hardware. If you do, you want to get that replaced. Now we're going to move into this CASE SR210B. Everything as far as the machine, the engine, the hydraulics, the loader circuit, that's all the same as the track machine we just looked at. We're going to go over some of the differences and what you need to check for on a wheeled machine. Before we get in the machine, we'll start by looking at tire condition, making sure that there's no gouges or cuts in the tire. Also, it depends on what type of tire you have. If you have a solid tire, that's not much of a concern. So next, one thing you want to look at is you want to look at the rim condition. You want to make sure that the rim's not bent or damaged or cracked. You want to make sure that the lug nuts are all tight. If there is indicator marks showing when the lug nut was tightened, you want to make sure those are lined up. Look for things like rust streaks around the lug nut, which could indicate a loose lug nut. Make sure the studs are in good condition. Another thing you want to check on a wheeled machine is the drive chain case cover. You want to check the cover for leaks. You want to check that the plugs are tight and you don't see any oil residue around the plugs. You can see this machine, we do have an issue. There is a little bit of oil that's around the bottom of the machine. So we do have a leak here somewhere. Next, we're going to get into the machine, raise the front off the ground, and we'll talk about what else to look for on the wheeled machine. Okay, with the machine off the ground, some things you want to check. You want to check for play in the chains. So if you rotate the wheel back and forth, you should have minimal play like this. If there's a bunch of slop back and forth, then that indicates you have an issue in the chain case somewhere, whether it be a sprocket, the drive motor, or the chain itself. Another thing you want to check for is play in the hub, in the axle. So you can grab the top and the bottom of the wheel and rotate it back and forth, rock it back and forth. There should be no play like here. If you do have play, you can look at the back and see if you have a seal leaking on the axle. If you do, then that can indicate that you have a hub seal that's bad or a bearing that's bad, and that's something you want to take care of before operating the machine. If you find any issues with your machine, you can reach out for parts or service help at any of our locations in Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Kentucky.